people are calling the idea of Joe Biden making Kamala Harris his VP. Apparently, that's being floated as an idea, and a lot of Democrats and there were loyalists in the party, and different voters out there. People on Twitter. I haven't seen a lot of people on Twitter mention it, but people on Twitter have been talking about how Kamala Harris, have been talking about. I'm sorry, they have not. I don't know if they've been talking about it on Twitter, but I'm sure there are a lot of loyalists are talking about this kind of stuff. Talking about how Kamala Harris being on a ticket with Joe Biden would be a dream ticket, quote unquote. There was also another idea being floated before Joe Biden even declared, if I remember correctly, that Stacey Abrams, who was running for the governor of Georgia, where she pretty much got cheated out of that election. They completely rigged the race against. I forgot the name of the white dude that won. But anyway, so Stacey Abrams, she lost her rigged election essentially in Georgia for the governor of Georgia. And after that, they were talking about how, recently, like less than a month ago or something, they were talking about how she would be on, it would be great for her to be on a ticket with Biden. So they were already floating. They've been floating these ideas constantly. So it hasn't really, it's not anything new, but it's just like the Kamala Harris one to me is new because, this article just came out a couple days ago, I think. Yeah, it came out less than a week ago. So, but this is a new one. So let me just read through this article a little bit and just quote some of the people that are making their feelings heard about this idea. The title of the article is A Dream Ticket. Black lawmakers pitch Biden Harris to beat Trump. The subheadline says, some members of the Congressional Black Caucus say it's an ideal ticket if the former vice president stays atop the polls. The Congressional Black Caucus may have found an answer to its Joe Biden dilemma, Vice President Kamala Harris. Some black lawmakers are agonizing over whether to back Biden or two members of the close-knit caucus, Senators Harris and Cory Booker, who are also vying for the White House. According to interviews with a dozen CBC members, but with the former vice president jumping out to a huge, if early, lead in the polls, several CBC members are warming to the idea of a Biden-Harris ticket to take on President Donald Trump. That would be, quoting Representative Lacey Clay, a Democrat from Missouri, says, that would be a dream ticket for me. A dream ticket, says enthusiastically. If she is not the nominee, that would be a dream ticket for this country. Okay. It says Harris is everything the 76-year-old Biden is not. The freshman senator from California is younger, a woman, and a person of color. As Biden gets dinged for his bipartisan bromides, Harris is winning applause from progressives for her merciless cross-examination of Trump officials. Just to make a side note here, that's not progressives. Progressives are not applauding Kamala Harris for cross-examining Trump officials. Those are just a bunch of people that love Kamala Harris. They're loyalists to the Democratic Party. They love the idea of identity politics and the identity of any black female politician, or really any black politician, really. But in this case, female politician, getting bigger name status and possibly becoming president and all that stuff. And that's why a lot of people even love, a lot of, I would say what I consider to be Democratic loyalists love Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who obviously beat Joe Crowley in New York over the, during the last midterms. So they like her a lot too, but that's only because she's a woman of color. They don't really care for like the fact that Ocasio-Cortez is not only backed by Bernie Sanders and a lot of actual progressives who they consider far leftists or whatever, which is us basically, but they only like her because she's a woman of color. She's Puerto Rican descent, I believe Ocasio-Cortez is. Yeah. So yeah, but that's really, it's all about really identity. It's all about identity politics. It doesn't have anything to do with actual policy substance, which is not surprising coming from Democratic loyalists and faux progressives, really faux progressives. Continuing on here, it says Democrats are also are desperate to boost black turnout in 2020, blaming the drop-off from Barack Obama's wins as one reason for Hillary Clinton's defeat. I don't know if that's necessarily true. It's not. That's true when it comes to maybe black male voters, so men of color. When it comes to women of color, though, they came out in droves for Hillary Clinton. Women of color loved Hillary Clinton in 2016, and that was the reason why Bernie Sanders couldn't beat her in a lot of the southern states, because the women of color were heavily supporting Hillary Clinton. What is this? This is a quote from Anthony Brown, a Democrat from Maryland. It says, either combination there I'd love. I think he's going to look to balance his ticket so that the ticket itself is more appealing. I think it would make sense, and it wouldn't surprise me if he picked a woman of color. It says, no one in the caucus is declaring Biden the winner of a presidential race that has nearly 24 candidates and is still 9 months from the first primary contest. And Democrats cautioned that they're not counting out Harris or Booker and would be thrilled if either won the Democratic nomination. Both senators have actively courted members of the CBC. Yet there is no question that Biden, thanks in part to his close relationship with Barack Obama, is popular with African American voters, according to several polls since he entered the race. That support from within the black community translates into backing from black lawmakers as well. And it's very unfortunate that people think that they can, well, this white dude, this old white dude has the seal of approval from the black community because the last black president chose him as his VP. I mean, is that really how shallow people are thinking? Like, can we not get any more, like, can we get a little bit more into the weeds a little bit, please? Instead of just assuming that, like, oh, he's got the approval. Don't worry, he's got the approval of the last black dude that was president, so he's perfectly fine. So as if that's the rubber stamp right there. That gets you into the club of being loved by all black people, by all African Americans, by all people of color. I mean, honestly, if people are really that shallow, that's pretty pathetic. I mean, that's sad. Because that shouldn't have anything to do with, I don't want to say anything, but that should have very little to do with people's decisions. Why not go based on the policies? So do you not know about Joe Biden? Joe Biden's being the chair of that committee regarding Anita Hill's testimony? Do you not know how he treated her, let alone let his colleagues treat her? Do you not know that he voted for the crime bill, and that the crime bill, as we mentioned in last week's episode, the crime bill was named after Joe Biden, and it was championed by Joe Biden. It was championed by then First Lady Hillary Clinton. Do you not know that he has supported those things? Do you not know that he's voted for basically every single endless war that we're involved in right now? Voted for or supported all of them? So how the hell is he a friend to black people? How is he a friend to minorities? How is he a friend to people of color and anybody that's not a white person? How is he a friend to you? I just don't get that. Why? Because Obama chose him. So that's it. Because Obama chose him, that's it. Automatically, that makes him the perfect option, the dream ticket, with another black woman to be his VP. Which honestly, a lot of these people saying that that the blacks. I mean, if you want to use their logic against them, saying that a black woman of color, in this case, I mean, just to be specific, Kamala Harris is Jamaican, half Indian ethnicity. But okay, so she's a black woman of color. She's a woman of color. She's a minority. Isn't it a little bit presumptuous to assume that the black woman of color, even Stacey Abrams, whether it's Kamala Harris, any other black woman you want to choose, isn't it a little presumptuous to assume that black woman has to be the subordinate of the white man? Now, okay, you can make the case that Joe Biden is ahead in the polls. He's doing well in the polls. It's understandable that he's going to be, the nominee. And again, I'm not in favor of Kamala Harris or Stacey Abrams to be president, to be VP. I'm just saying that if you want to take the position of the resistance and the, all these people that love the Democrats and fawn over every, the kind of the blue no matter who people, the people that just want to vote Democrat across the board because they just support Democrats, they are supposedly in favor of the woman, black woman, whatever, white woman, but in this case, a black woman being a top, being the top person, being the person that's considered at the top of the ticket. But in this case, for some reason, they're okay with being so this in this case, Kamala Harris or whoever, Stacey Abrams, being at the bottom of it, being the secondary, being the subordinate to the presidential. I'm sorry, to the nominee, so the presidential nominee for that party, in this case the Democrats. So that's a little weird, and it's interesting because Stacey Abrams, when she was asked about this, I think she made like an appearance on The View or something somewhere, and she was asked about this. She was like, "Yeah, that's bullshit. I'm not going to be. If I'm going to be running for president, I'm running for president. I'm not running to be anybody's VP." So, I mean, I'm not really a big fan of Stacey Abrams because I heard Stacey Abrams joined the board of the Center for American Progress, which is just a progressive group, and they're like anti-Bernie Sanders, and they're just like bunch of neoliberals, pro-Hillary neoliberals. But she joined that board, so I'm not a big fan of Stacey Abrams in general. I definitely think that she got cheated in her governor's race in Georgia, but again, I mean, just on principle alone, I don't think it's right to just assume that this black woman, whether it's Kamala Harris or Stacey Abrams or anybody else, deserves to be considered as like a subordinate to the people that they assume is going to be the nominee, in this case, Joe Biden. So I think that's a little bit jumping ahead. That's a little jumping ahead, putting the cart before the horse there. Let's see. It says, so this is quoting Emanuel Cleaver, who's another Democrat from Missouri. But for the fact that we have two of our own who are both quite capable of being president, I'd say probably a lot of the members would have already announced for Biden. I'm assuming that he means two of our own, meaning Kamala Harris and Cory Booker. It says, I'd say probably a lot of the members would have already announced for Biden? What does that mean? So people are already supporting Biden? That's weird. Okay. It says, were Biden to prevail in the fight for the nomination, Harris would be many members' vice presidential pick. If Biden becomes the nominee, that certainly would be my choice, said Marcia Fudge, who is a Democrat from Ohio, a female Democrat from Ohio, a senior member of the caucus. Right now, I'm still believing that Harris can be the top of the ticket. Let's see. It says it would absolutely be a very strong ticket, no question about that. Fudge said 1 and 2, 2 and 1, either way it would be great. It says Biden has a deep well of support within the influential group of 55 black lawmakers, having served alongside many of them in his 36 years as a senator and 8 years as vice president under the first African-American president. Biden has already racked up some key endorsements within the caucus, including from former CBC chairman Cedric Richmond, who is the Democrat from, is that Louisiana? Yeah, Louisiana. It says House Majority Whip Jim Clyburn, the highest-ranking African-American in Congress, often speaks fondly of Biden, a longtime friend, though Clyburn has said he won't endorse anyone before his home state's primary, which is South Carolina. He is a Democrat from South Carolina. Quoting Clyburn here, it says, I said a few weeks ago that if Biden were to get in, everybody else would be running for second place. I said that over a month ago, and he got in, and the polls said everyone else is running for second place. It should also be of no surprise that Biden is polling well among black Democratic primary voters, which is what Clyburn is noting. He says that, quote, the data are clear. I guess he means is. The data are clear that he has strong support among African Americans. It's just that simple. He's had that for a long time, and he's kept it steady so far. It says the CBC isn't expected to endorse in the Democratic race, although its political arm, CBC PAC, will likely wade into the crowded contest at some point. In the meantime, Biden, Harris, Booker, and other candidates are all wooing members of the CBC who have outsized influence with African American voters. It says Biden is a creature of Capitol Hill with relationships that go back decades with some of the most senior members of the caucus. He happily refers to his former boss, the first black president, as my, quote, my buddy Barack, end quote, on the campaign trail. I don't think people should underestimate the significance of this older white guy playing the role of second, a supportive second, to a younger man who is African American. And people felt this was real and authentic. Biden wasn't faking it. There was a real friendship there. Okay. I mean, he's not the VP anymore, so I don't know why you're referring to it as if it's like right now. Quoting Emmanuel Kleber again here, it says, Biden is very comfortable in African-American circles. Sometimes a white politician in an all-black setting, you can feel the seed of nervousness. Kleber said, with Biden, he's just right at home. You can see it and feel it. It says something about how Joe Biden was in constant contact with the CBC leaders and would host an annual dinner with the entire caucus at his house in observance of Black History Month. So basically, he was catering to them. He was sucking up to them. It says, quote from Val Demings, who's a Democrat from Florida. He called me before he made his announcement to fill me in, and I was honored that he would call me to let me know. And that person has yet to endorse anybody. It says Biden's already running as if he is the Democratic nominee. He took a picture with Kamala Harris. Yeah, I remember that. They were posing together. Let's see if it's the same one. They were posing together. Where was it? They were outside of somebody took some random picture of her. And outside, like from inside of a car, somebody was sitting inside of a car and took a picture of them, I guess. I don't know why. But it says, I don't know, it refers to Kamala Harris, him and Kamala Harris being friends or something. It says Trump commented on Joe Biden's candidacy, saying that, referring him to a Sleepy Joe or Sleepy Creepy Joe. For all of Trump's idiocy, he comes up with some funny nicknames. Yeah, it says Biden faced criticism after early reports he was eyeing former Georgia gubernatorial candidate Stacey Abrams as an early running mate. Abrams says she still considers seeking the top slot herself. So that's, like I mentioned, yeah, I didn't even know that. So I mean, so apparently he was already saying it. So he already, like, somehow he had made that statement, I guess, to somebody, and then it leaked, and then people put it out there, and then it came out. I thought other people were offering that as a possibility, just like they were with this Kamala Harris one. But apparently the Stacey Abrams one was floated out by Biden himself. One of the CBC members, so one of the members of the Congressional Black Caucus, said it would be premature and likely would backfire if he was already choosing his vice presidential pick. It says the vice president's team seems to be very sensitive to the notion that they have to go out and earn this. That's very similar to Hillary Clinton. You know, this is even worse than Hillary Clinton. Well, in some cases, I guess. But it's very similar to Hillary Clinton just assuming that she's won the nomination and that she's just going to fucking just easily get into the nomination and then easily beat Trump. Yeah, good luck with that. It says, the last quote here from the article, it says, this is from Al Green, who's a Democrat from Texas. It says, whomever the nominee is, I think there has to be a woman on the ticket, said Al Green, and I think it is time for an African-American woman to get that kind of consideration, whoever it happens to be. Yeah, so, you know, I don't have a particular preference to whether a woman is a woman of color is on the ticket or not. I think that's largely irrelevant, because I don't think that when those decisions are made, I don't think it's made in good conscience. I just think it's done to cater to that specific group. So that's all they really want to do. Like, they just want to, so that particular candidate that says, you know, oh, I'm going to make this, you know, black, you know, female or black man or whatever, I'm going to make him my vice president, or I'm going to consider him in whatever, any kind of role, some kind of role. I think that's just catering to the idea of the getting those people's votes. And like I said before, in an earlier segment that I was doing earlier, I think what Joe Biden and what really a lot of politicians want to do when they're choosing these vice presidential candidates is when they choose them to, so they choose, let's say they choose a black man, black woman. They choose that person to cater to the base. They cater to the, not so much the base, but they cater to that specific demographic of people of color and, people of color voters who, want that person to push for policies that are more, in favor of what, the black community wants. But when it comes down to it, is that person that is president, regardless of what skin color or ethnicity they are they truly going to be pushing for policies that are in favor of the black community? I don't think so. I mean, look at Barack Obama. What did Barack Obama do for the black community? He didn't really do anything. He didn't. The only thing he really, and I think I mentioned on whether it was the last episode or the episode before that, but the only thing that I remember Barack Obama doing is he did, near the end of his term, he did release some nonviolent drug offenders who were black from certain, I don't know who, I don't know the specific details of it, but he did do that, and there was like a profile about it on Vice, I believe. And he did like an interview in like a prison, and then I think they were talking to a couple of the inmates or something. But yeah, apparently Barack Obama did do that, and he did that, and but like it was kind of like, to me at least, and I think to a lot of people in the black community, I think it was like a little too late. It wasn't like he could have done it a hell of a lot earlier. He could have done that much, much earlier. But for some reason, he just decided to wait till like the very end. And I think it was largely because he didn't want a lot of people to have time to scrutinize him for it. So he did it later so that he didn't have to like hear from like the Republicans smearing him as like, well, you're sucking up to the black people and you're going to create a lot of violence because black people are being released out into the society. Bunch of bullshit, bunch of racist bullshit from a bunch of idiotic racist right wingers. But I don't think just choosing a person of color on your ticket, whether it's a woman or a man, is going to fix anything. The people, again, it's a very shallow point of view to assume that just because you put that person on your ticket automatically means that you're going to be like, pushing for everything that the black community wants. All that does is just panders to the black community and makes them think that you're on their side, when in reality you're not on their side. And that takes me to my core point. It's the policy that matters. It's the policies that you're pushing for that are going to that are going to hurt people of color, that are going to help the black community, help Hispanics, help Asians, Middle Eastern people, any kind of ethnicity that's not white that you want to put out there. There's certain policies that's going to help them, and that takes me to the point that the larger point that Bernie Sanders' idea of helping the black community it doesn't seem to be something that either A, the black community supports, or B, the way it's reported that the black community supports it. And I have said before in the past that a lot of the all this hoopla about how the black community doesn't support Bernie Sanders, and they don't like what he stands for, and they don't think he's going to do what he wants, what they want on policies, and he's going to help them out. I mean, that's just bullshit, because they can't point to anything. So they can't point to anything where Barack Obama says like, yeah, I'm sorry, not Barack Obama, but Bernie Sanders says like, yeah, I don't care about black people. Like, he's never, I don't care about black people issues. No, they're just like, all that stuff is just made up. That's just bullshit. It's just a bunch of bullshit to me, where they just want to. It's a matter of manufacturing consent, where the media portrays something to be the case when it's truly not, and it's just something that the media does to try and frame the debate and portray Bernie Sanders as just being like this curmudgeon old white man who doesn't give a shit about what black people are going through and what the struggles that they're suffering with, even though Bernie Sanders he marched with Martin Luther King. He has pushed for, he's pushed for, constant so he's pushed for policies that would help the black community. He's pushed for raising the minimum wage. He's pushed for allowing, so because apparently there's there's a large community there's a large part of the black community that is unable to get so women of color, so black women are unable to get treatment for like reproductive rights. So they have to go to a lot of a lot of Planned Parenthood clinics, and they have to go to the kind of clinics where they're going to get, like, for example, birth control, and they're going to get, be able to get pap smears, and let's say, if they want to get an abortion, they can get an abortion. If they want to, any kind of issues that have to do with like women's rights. Barack Obama has always been, I'm sorry, again, I keep saying Barack Obama. Bernie Sanders has always stood up for that, and he has pushed for policies that will help the black community. And like I was saying, as I was saying before I got into the part about kind of like women and kind of pushing for policies that help women, especially when it comes to reproductive rights. He has pushed for policies that advocate for women to get that kind of health care. So it's because when women go to those kind of clinics that help with reproductive rights and birth control and all that kind of stuff, abortion or whatever, that involves poor communities. And unfortunately, a lot of them are black communities that are poor. And he's pushed for policies that would help those poor communities, because a lot of people, let's be honest, that unfortunately, a lot of people that are black and people of color, they are not able to afford healthcare. They're not able to afford going into a hospital, let alone to get a decent insurance plan to get treatment for something that they need regarding, like whether it's a pap smear, whether it's a ultrasound, all that kind of stuff. Let's say if a woman is pregnant and she wants to go get an ultrasound, she doesn't have the kind of money to go into a hospital or to get an insurance plan that is going to cover her. So she's got to go to a Planned Parenthood clinic. So again, Bernie Sanders has pushed for policies that support women's rights, that allow women to do those kind of things, so that they don't have to rely on a pricey insurance plan or kind of the for-profit health insurance industry to screw over women of color, so that they have to rely on those assholes to give them some sort of give them an important treatment that they want, so they can rely on something like Planned Parenthood. And he's also pushed for, like I think I said before, pushing for a living wage, or raising the minimum wage, $15 minimum wage. He's pushed for these kind of things that, and a lot of people don't like it, but Bernie Sanders, he pushes for things so they kind of, it's kind of like a crossover between race and class. So a lot of the black community doesn't like that Bernie Sanders likes to kind of intertwine the existence of race and class, and say that, listen, people that are black are in a certain class, when they shouldn't be, really, but they are. But they're put into a certain class where, because you're black, you're poor, and you're black, you got to go live in Section 8 housing. You got to go live in a poor community. You got to go live like shit, essentially. While the rest of America, white America, essentially lives in a more kind of suburban community. It's more safer, and so it's it's just like, people of color are just not treated like human beings, And I think this was going back to way before. I think this was a point that was made by, I think, John Edwards, going all the way back to 2008, when I think John Edwards was running. He was actually John Kerry's vice presidential pick, but John Edwards made the point of two Americas, and he was pointing out the fact that there's two Americas. One. And I don't remember the specific argument that he made, but from what I remember, he was stating that there's two Americas, in the sense that there's the poor America and there's the rich America. And I think I can add to that by saying that there's the black America and there's the white America. And a lot of people have made that point before too, where those two, demographics, those two ethnicities, those two, sides are basically pitted against each other, and one is treated much better while the other one is treated like shit. And the black community is completely ignored. All the demands that they want, that they make, and the things that they want is ignored, while white America is just, they get away with everything, And there are figures that come out that have shown that white Americans, so white people in America are actually selling and doing drugs at a higher rate than black people are in America. Yet, who are the people that got arrested more for doing drugs or selling drugs? Black people, even though they don't do it as much as white people. So that says a lot about how our politicians in this country have treated the issue of race relations, the issue of how black people are treated in this country, and a lot of it has been perpetuated by the likes of people that are similar to Joe Biden, or if not Joe Biden. I mean, he pushed for the fucking crime bill, for Christ's sake. I mean, this is a guy that was okay with imprisoning more black people, and he thought it was a perfectly fine thing to do because, like I played for a clip for you guys before, it was from, I believe it was last week or a week before that, he was talking about how we have to get all these predators off the street, these predators that are, hitting my wife over the head with a lead pipe and beating up my son and stuff. I think it was just total fear-mongering. It was a clip from 1991 or 1992 or something, 93, somewhere around when the crime bill was being debated. And he was just going on this total ridiculous fear-mongering rant and just scare this kind of like way to like scare regular white folk essentially and make them think that all these black people are out there to just beat everybody over the head with lead pipes and kill them and shoot them and rape them and all that stuff. So the last person I'm going to trust on when it comes to the issue of black issues and black relations and kind of bridging that gap between white and black America, the last person I'm going to expect to do that is Joe Biden, just based on his history. I mean, am I saying that Joe Biden is like this, like avowed racist, obviously white nationalist or anything? No, I'm not saying that. But his policies are definitely not aligned and in line with what the black community wants. I think honestly, if you ask 500 people in the black community, just any regular, let's say 250 women, 250 men, and you ask them, do you support Joe Biden for president? I would honestly venture to guess that I would think it would go down the line. And I think a lot of them would be in support of him because he was Barack Obama's vice president. And so he has that name recognition, but also has that recognition from our first black president. But I think the other ones, they would be like, yeah, like the younger demographic, I think, who are much more, I would say, informed, not the boomer generation who are, they're okay with like the older kind of politicians who are in favor of like old school policies, essentially, like Biden is. They would be in favor. So like the boomers would be in favor of Biden, whether they're black, whether they're white, whatever they are, Mexican, whatever. But whereas the younger generation of black people, whether they're men or women, I think they would be against Joe Biden. I think. And I mean, a lot of polls have shown that, at least a lot of the polls that I've seen, aside from a couple ones that were just ridiculously, oversampled with boomers, they claim, oh yeah, no, the younger demographic totally loves Joe Biden, even though they were oversampling boomers. So it was bullshit. But aside from what the media puts out there, it's obvious that the boomer generation would love Joe Biden, whereas the younger Gen X, I'm sorry, not Gen X, Gen Z, so the millennials, people my age, I'm 32 years old. People in my generation, they would definitely, if they're black, they would definitely like Bernie Sanders more. They would definitely like somebody like even Elizabeth Warren, maybe stuff like that. So like people that are more progressive. And trust me, I have my issues with Elizabeth Warren, but just to throw other names out there that I think black people would prefer, it wouldn't be Joe Biden. I think it would be other more actual progressive politicians that have actual policies that push for, things that would help the black community. Whereas I can't think of one single policy that Joe Biden has put out there that would help the black community at all. And all his other policies that he's pushed for have all been to the detriment of black people. So, I mean, that's ultimately what it comes down to. And if you want to look at the facts, that's what it is.